Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Feingold, editor of New Hampshire Business Review, and I'd like to welcome you to the latest edition of NHBR's NextGen New Hampshire, giving us all a chance to hear the insights and advice from some of the state's most interesting and engaging business leaders. And today's panel is really an excellent one. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Service Credit Union, as well as our other sponsors, Bank Prov and Connection. We so appreciate their support in helping us bring this discussion to you. I don't want to take too much time because I'm sure I am as eager as you are to get this discussion going. It will be led by NHBR's own NextGen, our associate editor, Amanda Andrews, who's just waiting for me to shut up so she can get going. So let's get this party started right. Take it away, Amanda.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate that. And good morning, everyone. As Jeff mentioned, this is our NextGen event, and we're going to hear from some excellent business leaders who are going to help talk about how to develop, engage, and empower the emerging generation of new leaders. So over the course of the morning, you're going to hear from our four panelists here, and they're going to share their perspectives on challenges that the workforce is facing in New Hampshire and share some business practices that executives can think about addressing in their own workplace. Our panelists today are Casey Snyder, Partner, Managing Director, and Wealth Manager at Sedoric Group of Steward Partners, Jodie Nazaka, Director of the Manchester Economic Development Office, Marlana Trombley, the Head of Marketing at Orbit Group, and Amanda Schoenberg, Owner and Chief Clinical Officer at A.B.A. Behavioral Consulting. After they each present their viewpoints, we're going to hold a Q&A, and the audience and everybody listening will have a chance to ask questions. You feel free to use the chat feature to present your comments or questions. As our speakers present, I encourage everyone listening to send in those questions, and I can address them in the Q&A portion at the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start today with Casey Snyder. So I'm going to welcome him to the screen, and I'll have him start. Thank you, Casey.
Good morning, and thank you, Amanda and Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this talented panel and contribute to the conversation on New Hampshire's emerging leaders of tomorrow. And I'd like to start by saying I'm really excited about the emerging workforce here in New Hampshire. And I think there are a number of challenges, but with challenges come great opportunities. And from our perspective in the world of wealth management and financial planning, we work a lot with business owners, decision makers, and members of senior management. And one of the emerging trends that's been in play for a while now, but I think we're beginning to see more visibly, is the demographic gap that exists where we have senior leaders and owners in their 60s and 70s, and often successors in their 40s and sometimes 30s. And this disparity between the large baby boomer generation and the smaller Gen X population, followed by the larger numbers of millennials and Gen Z, has created a gap in both the labor force and sometimes skill sets. And this shortage of labor is not limited to specific professions. It affects various industries, including accounting and estate planning, which are two professions that are near and dear to us, but obviously also the likes of the trades like HVAC, plumbing, electricians, the healthcare world, whether it be primary care, specialty care, daycare providers, and the list goes on. For example, last year, approximately 300,000 accountants left the profession here in the US, leaving a significant void, but there too creates the opportunity. And while we may not have an immediate solution for the labor shortage, and this is where we rely on someone like maybe Jodie, who's going to speak next, we can address the skills gap and the retention of talent, turning what may seem like a negative situation into a positive opportunity. So to do this, I'm going to discuss three key components or strategies that we find useful when it comes to bridging the generational gap. And I admit, I'm not sure there's anything novel here, but as a member of a multi-generational team and working with multi-generational clients and business owners, these are examples of what we've found helpful when it comes to the emerging workforce of tomorrow. So first, I think open and constructive communication between business owners and senior leaders and the emerging generation is fundamental. It's key. And by openly communicating, we can assess our organizational strengths and weaknesses and identify the specific skills gap, if there is one, resulting from the generational disparity. And this isn't an innovative idea, but until you clearly identify the skills gap, again, if there is one, it's hard to formulate a solution or create the bridge. And there are plenty of resources out there within our own team, which very much resembles the generational gap we are discussing. We've leveraged resources like DISC assessment, which is a more personal assessment tool to help improve teamwork or communication and productivity. And more recently, we utilized an assessment tool called Profile XT when we were onboarding a new team member last year, which is meant to help align the qualities of an individual with their specific role and desired career path. But it's not a one and done exercise. These are meant to be revisited and reassessed every few years. And I probably pull out the assessment 4 to 5 times each year because of how it helps me communicate with others. Second, I think we need to recognize and respect the differences in generational norms. And what's normal for a 25 or 45 and 65-year-old will often be different. Not wrong, just different. And in my own development, I was taught that you can't judge and learn at the same time. It's a simple statement, but it had a profound impact when it comes to some of the generational differences. It can be easy for the judgy voice in the back of one's mind to start talking to you. But if we can recognize that judgy voice and turn it off, we move ourselves into learning mode. And it's in learning mode when we're better able to recognize the excellences of others. And we approach differences with curiosity rather than judgment. And then we're able to be mentored and reverse mentor in ways that help bridge the skills gap. I say it to our team members all the time. What's one thing that you can learn from this conversation or the next conversation? Find the nugget of wisdom in every conversation, whether or not you initially perceive that conversation to be useful. And I think it's this respectful, curious mindset that helps bind these generational differences and convert them into strengths. And it's with these first two components, we have open communication and respecting the differences in generational norms, where we get to the third, which is the importance of supporting and investing in others. And I believe this is a two-pronged approach, and we must support and invest in others both personally and professionally. And I say it this way because in many cases, if we don't support someone personally, we won't be able to retain them professionally. So on a personal level, I think this entails aligning job requirements with an understanding of the emerging leaders' lives, values, and responsibilities. Many individuals in the emerging workforce are part of the sandwich generation, let's call it. We have 2 working parents raising young children, and while also sometimes caring for aging parents. True stories like this happen all the time, where somebody's at work, they receive a call from daycare about their child throwing up in the hallway 3 minutes before an important meeting, while also trying to coordinate, the signing of their parents' estate planning documents that are overdue by 15 years. These things happen now all the time in the workforce. Therefore, this emerging workforce, I think, requires an immense amount of flexibility. And this is where it can become complicated, because they also appreciate defined boundaries in order to navigate their demanding roles effectively. So they appreciate work-life balance in a world where work-life balance is increasingly difficult. And on the professional level, we can't bridge the skills gap by forcing experience, because experience takes time. But we can expedite people's learning curves by investing in people and showing that we care. So I think it's crucial for businesses at all levels to invest in themselves and their employees now more than ever. And as the world rapidly changes, it's essential to continuously upgrade skills and knowledge, no different than how we update our smartphones and operating systems every few years. So, supporting professional development through certificate programs, leveraging coursework through community colleges, mentorship. Mentorship's amazing. Community involvement, conferences, and coaching. All can expedite the learning curve and demonstrate care for employees. And I've been blessed to have some amazing mentors along the way. And I've had an executive coach for almost 4 years now because of how we recognized the generational gap within our own team. And let me tell you, it was a humbling experience at first, but I wanted to expedite the development of various skills to help close the generational gap. And sure, there's weeks where I'm not fully into it, but it's been one of the best decisions I've made for my personal and professional life. I want to make sure that we support others in that quest as well. And I think it's often said that the emerging workforce may lack critical soft skills, and whether it be leadership or management or just basic interpersonal skills. And I think one of the most underutilized ways of developing critical soft skills is through community involvement. So volunteering within communities and nonprofit organizations fosters collaboration, problem solving, and the absorption of wisdom from experienced individuals, which in turn leads to the development of critical soft skills in emerging leaders. And I think it's a true win-win for the community, for the individual, and it's another way to help sort of fill that gap. Okay. So I think no matter what, the demographic that we're talking about here, I think it's a matter of putting yourself in their shoes to understand their world and values and merging that with the collective wisdom and objective of the firm and one's ongoing responsibilities. And to close my little segment here, I read a great book in 2022 called From Strength to Strength by Arthur C. Brooks that I would encourage every business owner, workaholic, or entrepreneur to read because of how it provides ideas and solutions to make sure that the emerging workforce and their success to come isn't at the expense of the older workforce preparing for their eventual transition. Our skill sets change, they evolve over time, and I think accepting this at every level is an important component of strategic planning and the continued success of any firm. The culture of any firm starts at the top, and I think awareness and empathy are traits that our emerging workforce appreciates and gravitates to. So with that, I'll turn it back to Amanda and appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Casey. That was really informative. And thank you for those who are already submitting questions. So to the screen, we welcoming Jodie Nazaka, and I'll let her kick it off.
Thank you so much. Thank you to New Hampshire Business Review, to Amanda and Jeff for hosting this today, and for the sponsors making this event possible, and for everyone that has tuned in this morning to listen to us and our opinions and perspectives on this. So I'll be taking a different approach than Casey just had, and I'll be speaking to attracting young professionals to the state and to communities with targeted branding. So where Casey just touched on the age gaps that we're experiencing in the workforce, when you think of New England, when you think of New Hampshire, often you think of cold and old, which is not wrong. So what we're trying to do here in Manchester is to brand our community so we are doing a better job of attracting the workforce. So branding is important because not only is it what makes a memorable impression for a business community to your consumers, for our community, to the residents and visitors, but it allows individuals to know what to expect from either your company or your community. It is a way of distinguishing yourself from the competitors and clarifying what it is that you offer, either as a business within your workforce or as a community that makes you a better choice from the competition. So things that are important to promote from the community level are oftentimes what we have here in New Hampshire is a great cost of living. Yes, we do have a higher cost of living when you compare to maybe the southern region of the United States. However, when you compare the New Hampshire area to the Boston area, we have a really strong cost of living when you compare it to what the median incomes are. We have a great quality of life here in New Hampshire, and that's absolutely something that we want to do a better job of promoting. Promoting community events, arts and culture, and whatever your community or your business's unique assets are. So in Manchester, we have set aside money from the American Rescue Plan to do a targeted place branding and marketing strategy for the city. And part of this in New Hampshire across the board, we have a very low unemployment rate, which is great. However, there's still a strong demand for increased workforce. So what we're looking to do is we obviously want to retain our residents and our visitors that we have now, but we're also looking outward and looking to attract new members to our workforce, which means increasing housing, increasing our opportunities, increasing our quality of life, events, all of that goes into increasing what the community brand is. So when we're looking most importantly at the younger professional workforce, we know that millennials are the largest generation group right now in the US workforce. And in 2022, I think the estimated population was over 72 million. So millennials were obviously born between 1991 and 1996. And they have recently surpassed baby boomers as the biggest group within the workforce. So it's no doubt that we're in the New Hampshire workforce, we're going to be targeting that group because they have the most to offer right now. And something that's unique about millennials that maybe is different from other past generations is the willingness to pay more for convenience, quality of life, and sustainability. So what I will be speaking about is how we can use branding opportunities, not only for just communities to help benefit the business community, but how businesses can use branding to help benefit themselves and their attraction levels. So there is a lot of significance in branding and marketing for downtowns, towns, cities, counties, regions, states, and for the purposes of economic development, tourism, citizen engagement, and unification of community-wide public entities and partner organizations. So I'm really excited to be a part of this process in the city of Manchester, because not only is it an initiative for the city of Manchester, we're not looking at this as an opportunity for the city government to rebrand, but this is an opportunity for the city as a whole to have a unique identity and for us to drive the narrative of what makes Manchester and the Southern New Hampshire region a wonderful place to live, work, play, grow a family, start a business, and relocate. So in simple terms, a community brand is what people say about you when you're not around. It's a combination of emotional and rational reactions to all the different experiences, marketing communications, and behaviors people have encountered when engaging with or considering a community. So branding is a process a community embarks on to either change, refine, improve what people are saying. Now, right now in Manchester, this is an initiative that the city has never undertaken before. So there's never been an opportunity for anyone to drive the story of Manchester. And it's an exciting opportunity because it gives us the ability to share with the greater community what is happening in our city. And what we like to tout is the history we have here in Manchester with our mill yard and the fact that our city has always been known for its innovation. When the mill buildings were first created, they were very innovative for their time. They were used for textile manufacturing, and the looms and the equipment that was in those buildings was very innovative. Once that industry kind of went to the wayside, the buildings got a little deteriorated, and they saw a resurgence in the 90s and the early 2000s for tech startups and more technology-based and software types of programming. That has now also gone to the wayside. And what we're seeing now is a new technology and a new type of industry that's so innovative. A lot of people aren't aware of what's happening. And I'm happy to share this with the folks that are attending today, because there may be some folks on the call that live here in New Hampshire and aren't even aware of what's happening in the mill yard here in New Hampshire. And right now, we are manufacturing human tissue and organ through DNA, through Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, short is ARMI. And that is part of the story that we're sharing with the greater community. And that is building a workforce that currently doesn't exist. The technology and the industry is so new that we are actually growing an industry. We are creating a new workforce. And in order to do that, we are investing in the job creation and the work and learn programs that are going into this. So this is really exciting because we're using this branding initiative to help drive the story, to help create the industry, and to help create the workforce. This is something extremely innovative, and this is something that isn't even happening anywhere around the country. And I use this as an example because it's an excellent opportunity to use this as a way for your businesses or your communities to draw attraction to the area. You take a unique asset that your community or your business has, and you work it into what your brand is. What are you selling? Why would anyone want to come live in your community or work for your organization? So there's tremendous opportunities within creating a positive brand identity. A lot of times without targeted marketing and brand initiatives, sometimes the brand story can go a bit on the negative. We've certainly experienced that here in Manchester, where sometimes the news headlines end up taking center stage and driving the narrative of what's happening in the city. I always use the example, when you go out to a restaurant and you have a bad experience, you are more likely to write a negative review than you are to write a positive review. If you've had a positive experience, like that was great, and you end up leaving, and you'll likely come back, but you don't often go out and express to the entire Google community what your experience was. But if you had a very bad experience, you're likely to share that for the entire internet to read. So it's human nature for the negative stories to get more press and more time in front of everyone. So again, another opportunity why it's important to help drive the narrative, whether from a community, your downtown, your region, or your business, to tell people why you are unique, why you are important, and why people want to invest in you. And branding goes a long way with young professionals. So when thinking about how to grow your workforce or how to reach individuals that maybe you're having a hard time reaching, think about how you're targeting them. Think about how your job descriptions are written, how you're getting your job descriptions out there. Millennials tend to use oftentimes social media more than others. They look really closely at brand authenticity. So they want to make sure that you're writing a job description that doesn't feel like a machine wrote it. It feels like it's an actual humanized position. So all of these types of things going into branding and creating a community that people are attracted to. And to close, I use examples as Asheville, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina, when you create a successful brand story, because I said those two examples, and there's probably people on this call that are aware of those communities that I just referenced, but have never actually been to those communities. That's because those communities have done such a phenomenal job of branding themselves and sharing their story and building out an industry that is attracting people. They are attracting young professionals, they are attracting travel and tourism, and they are very similar makeups to what Manchester and the southern New Hampshire region is, and that it is not on a water body, it's typically landlocked and on a river. So you don't always need some maritime type of travel and tourism to help make a successful community. I say that because we often look in the New Hampshire area, we look at Portsmouth as a very promising type of brand identity, but they do have something that most communities in New Hampshire can't relate with, and that is the seacoast. So I'm going to close with that. I'm about at time, and I know I shared a lot and threw a lot at you guys, but I'd be happy to expand a little bit more during the Q&A about why branding is so important at a community level and also a business level in workforce attraction.
Thank you, Jodie, very much for that. And now we're going to take it off with Marlana. Marlana, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to keep this rolling. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how we can motivate employees by leveraging the power of collaboration, coaching, and creativity. And as I kind of talk over the next 10 minutes, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, what you're currently doing, what you want to do more of, what hasn't worked for you in the past. And as always, when I have these conversations, I really encourage you to take one or two things away from this that you can put into action. And oftentimes, maybe some of the things I might be sharing are quite obvious, but hopefully it's an opportunity to think through making the time and setting time apart to how you can actually implement this in your organization. So collaboration, coaching, and creativity truly unlock the full potential of your workforce. So whether any of those generations that have been talked about this morning, those are really three key pieces that can unlock the full potential. And these three elements are crucial in creating an environment where employees feel inspired, empowered, and engaged. And so the first I'm going to talk about is the power of collaboration. So that is really a catalyst for employees' motivation, and engagement. So we want that in our workforce. We want that in our organization. When employees work together and contribute their unique skill sets and perspectives, they will feel a sense of belonging, purpose, and a shared ownership. And so when I talk about cross-functional collaboration, it can also be cross-team collaboration or cross-departmental collaboration. And I just wanted to kind of dive into some examples on how to activate that collaboration. So you really want to encourage your employees from different departments or teams to collaborate on projects, because this will give you that diversity in thought, enhance problem-solving capabilities, and ultimately spark innovation and creative ideas. So some examples on how to do that is to get your sales and marketing teams working together, and maybe your customer service and your product development teams. And for an example, your front line is typically your customer success, your customer service, your sales team. And if they're kind of talking and communicating with your product development team on things that they're hearing, concerns, roadblocks, reasons why people won't make that purchase, or concerns that they're having with your product or service, you can work with that product development team on making improvements and iterations to your products and services, and also working with the marketing team on creating that effective messaging. So it's really crucial to get your teams talking together and not working in silos. You can consider creating a team charter, which is basically a blueprint for how each team will work together, and making sure that those goals align with the overarching goals of the organization. And you can get alignment on your tool stack and simplify. So I think one of the things that happened during COVID is that there was a lot of different tools kind of thrown at us. Every time we meet with someone, there might be different tools that we're using, but also within our organizations themselves. So this could be one action item is just kind of getting an understanding and a baseline of all the tools you're using, and how do you simplify that tool stack? Do you consolidate them? And getting really clear on how and where people communicate. So if you have something like Slack for messaging, but you also are very active in your organization using email, getting super clear, because also different generational team members might have a comfort zone or a preference of one or another, but you don't want information getting lost. And then you can also create a cross-functional innovation task force. And this is where you can basically have a task force identify opportunities and brainstorm ideas on how to implement this and develop strategies and solutions across your organization. So that first one is just cross-functional collaboration, and instilling that in your organization will help prioritize that all departments can speed up your initiatives and your goals and kind of get to that, those overarching goals and revenue goals, company goals. So number 2 on collaboration I wanted to talk about was team building, which has come up a little bit. And organization team building activities are going to strengthen the bond among employees. And these activities can range from off-site retreats to just lunches on site or cross-functional projects. So by creating and supporting cohesive team environments, employees are going to feel motivated to collaborate and support each other. So some examples that I really love are, there's now tools, if you guys are virtual or a hybrid organization, there's actually virtual escape rooms, online trivia competitions that are so fun, and collaborative challenges where your different teams or different team members can work together to solve problems or complete tasks, and it's can be just as competitive and fun as if it was in person. So knowing that that's an option, and I'm happy to drop links to these resources here and also on LinkedIn. But Lunch and Learns featuring guest speakers are also a great way to get people learning about different topics happening in the community and different topics within your organization. I think bringing in internal experts across the team is also a great way. So people really have a solid understanding of what everyone is working on across different departments. So employee-led presentations are also typically a very good direction to go as well. There's also tools like donut.com that you can do virtual coffee chats, which it will kind of automatically sync you with someone to have conversations. And as Casey mentioned, volunteer activities, I'm a huge proponent for this, but getting your team activated outside of the organization and doing something good for the community, learning about the community is a really great value add and team building opportunity. And there are also some really great virtual volunteer activities for those of you who are hybrid or remote based first. So I also just kind of wanted to share, like, sometimes this just feels like if you're a small team, how do you kind of make this happen? And I think one of the best ways to do this that I've done in past organizations is creating a fun committee, which sounds maybe wild, but it is a really great way to activate people who have a natural excitement around bringing people together, and they don't necessarily have to be in HR, but you can get a little committee together and give them a budget and allow them to do the planning of these team building activities. And you can rest assured that they will happen and they won't land on your plate or on a plate that on someone else's plate that's already really full. So the power of collaboration is super key, and building cross-functional opportunities across your organization as well as team building activities is something that hopefully you already are doing or can take a little bit more time to dive into. Secondly is just effective coaching for growth. And so I know Casey also talked a little bit about this. So furthering this along, coaching is a powerful tool for motivating employees and really unlocking their full potential and having them truly understand the folks that they work with. It involves providing guidance, support, and feedback to facilitate professional development. And some of the ways that I really like to implement this is more focused around strength-based coaching. So I do have a book here, Strength Finders 2.0, and this is also something that you can get online, but this is a tool that it's going to help you find your strengths as well as your employees' strengths, and really help you focus on your strengths versus your weakness and make sure that people are in the right roles, doing the right things. And this is a really fun team building activities. We've done these on offsites, and it's really even great if you can kind of model it out and show where everyone's strengths are and where people kind of overlap, and are there certain strengths that are super heavy in specific departments. There's also personality tests that you can do something similar with, and it's always just really great to understand how your employees show up and what their strengths are and how to best utilize them as you come up with new initiatives. And then goal setting and progress tracking is something that I think is hard for smaller businesses, but setting clear and achievable goals with your employees and providing ongoing feedback to track progress, I think, is something that everyone can appreciate, and having those regular check-ins and performance discussions. So at our organization, we use OKRs and SMART goals. And so those are really helpful in aligning all the way up to our organizational goals and tracking against them. And then finally, how do we nurture creativity in our workforce? And coming from the marketing side, creativity is maybe more of a natural conversation point in our department, but it's something that could be and should be across the entire organization. And creativity is just a powerful driver of employee motivation and satisfaction again. And when employees are encouraged to think outside of the box, explore new ideas, and contribute to innovation, they feel valued, and they also feel inspired, and they want to work towards executing on these ideas once they are approved and connected to the overarching goals of the organization. So making time for creative thinking and brainstorming is something I think we can all do more of, because we can get in kind of the weeds of our day-to-day and our weekly meetings, our team meetings, but actually kind of carving out that time for creative thinking and brainstorming is really key. And so I have a few different tools that I can link to that can help with this. But in our organization at Orbit Group, we're launching Manchester Distillery. And one of our principals, Liz Hitchcock, recommended that we read a book that really unlocked a lot of creativity across our organization. It's been really fun to kind of almost have like a team book club, if you will, and encouraging people to kind of spin off ideas from what the learnings were from that book. And so this one is right here, but it's been really helpful in helping get our Manchester distillery up and running. But certainly there are other brainstorming activities that you can do beyond just starting a book club and having conversations about your learnings. You could do different tactics where you create crazy eights. So you have 8 ideas in 8 minutes. And you can you basically fold your paper 8 times in half, and then you have 1 minute for each block to either draw or write out an idea. And you can do the same thing with as 8 of the worst ideas you can possibly think of, and do some reverse brainstorming that way. That's also really effective. And then I always like to take a learning lesson from improv. So as you're brainstorming, a good reminder is, instead of saying no or but during a brainstorming, try to say yes and dive deeper and really activate conversation around ideas, because there's no decision making right at the beginning of brainstorming. So it's really just trying to get people in your organization to have those great conversations. So encouraging idea sharing and creating a platform for this. So we talked about kind of your tool stack. Do you have something like Slack or an online messaging tool, or even just a parking lot document where people can toss ideas into? And this will ultimately help foster culture where all ideas are welcome and celebrated, regardless of hierarchy or specific departments. So this is a really great way. If you guys are really busy and you haven't necessarily set time away for brainstorming, can you create kind of a collaborative document or a Slack channel where people can submit ideas that can be placed in a parking lot until you're ready to have those conversations? And of course, there are other things like creating design thinking workshops to create that ultimately will kind of unlock those problem solving techniques to create that innovation and give you perspective to generate these ideas. So some quick takeaways overall today is just motivating employees through collaboration, coaching, and creativity is key to unlocking their full potential. And by fostering a collaborative environment, providing effective coaching for growth, and nurturing creativity, we can create an atmosphere where employees feel inspired, engaged, and motivated. So hopefully we can embrace these strategies and create a workplace that fuels innovation, ownership thinking, personal development, and overall success. And I'm excited to continue this conversation. I know Amanda's coming up next, and I'll take a look at some of the questions coming in and hope to have more of these conversations over in our Q&A.
Thank you, Marlana. Before I introduce Amanda, I just want to say to both Marlana and Casey, if you guys are able to drop the names of those books and the links in our chat, so we can share those with our audience, that would be super helpful. I know they look like great resources, so thank you. And welcome Amanda Schoenberg to the screen, and I'll have you continue.
So I'm just going to share my screen, which has a few books, so you guys can take those down. These will also be my objective. So is just the PowerPoint up right now? Like that. Okay, so I started my agency about 6 years ago, and my goal at the time was to provide behavioral services as a behavior analyst. And I wanted to provide services that I thought fit and provide them the way that I wanted to. So I find that there are 2 different types of leaders and or business owners. Those that are born leaders and those that just have a burning passion that they want to disseminate. I am the latter. So being on this talk today, you know, I feel like I have a little bit of imposter syndrome that I'm feeling. I come from the human service side of it with just that growing passion, like hopefully some of you as well. So once I had started, I quickly realized that the need is vaster than I personally could provide. And we began to expand and hire. And once I started hiring, my focus really had to shift from providing those direct behavior analytics services to my clients to shifting to applying those to my own agency, to my employees, to the structure of my company. As many of you probably realize, nowadays there is a lot of turnover. It can be really challenging to hire, and the focus should really be on retention and employee satisfaction opposed to just hiring. So how can you keep the people that you already have with you? Specifically in the human service or education fields, our clients see massive rates of turnover between staff, teachers, caregivers, and everything in between, the doctors, paraprofessionals. There is an immense amount of turnover. So one of my goals really has to be able to reduce turnover to not contribute to this greater problem that we have in our field. I recently saw a statistic that said that there was just over 9 million job openings right now, and there are just over 5 million unemployed people. That means that there's about 4 million jobs that will remain unfilled. We don't have people to fill those jobs. So that tells me employees have options. They have a lot of options, right? So why do people want to work for you? Why do people want to work with you? And why do they want to stay with you? So I'm going to talk a little bit today about organizational behavior management. So OBM, and this is part of the behavior analysis science field. It's a sector that is behavior analysis for large organizations and small organizations. So to start with, knowing your own company goals and your motivators is first and foremost the major priority. So what do you as a leader or as a business owner, what do you need? And every single field and every single job is going to have a different need. So you need to have an understanding. Do you want to have, is it quality of work? Is it quantity of work? Is it precision? Is it speed? Is it safety? Or is it a combination of numerous things? Focusing on what you as a leader need for your organization allows you to focus on the positive things that you can build upon. So with employees, we want to say, what are the things that we want them to do? What are the ways we want them to act? And how do we get more of that? The focus should not be on reacting to the things that we don't want to say. Focus on the things that we do want to see. So my goal is always to find the best in every single person. And of course, over time, you know, as you grow, you may have more separation from direct employees to having your leaders under you and their employees as well. So yeah, having that overall company goal and figuring out what motivates you as a leader. Next, so this is more employee specific. So this is building a rapport. You should know every single person that is that you're supervising, that you're managing. You should know them personally and professionally. So this can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes because, you know, I have had staff that maybe have education or career goals that don't align to their current position. Knowing that and being able to build them as people, as professionals, is going to motivate them to continue to come to work. And sometimes maybe that means assisting with finding them something in a different field as well, and that's okay. Knowing your staff and what makes them tick, what motivates them, what is their family dynamic like, what are their hobbies, what are the things that they love to do on the weekend. Having that true connection and compassion makes us all feel like we're people and we're not numbers. One of the things that can be really helpful with building a rapport is in our field, what we call a preference assessment. So you can directly send these out to your employees. Do your employees, are they motivated by you know, finances? Are they motivated by time off? Are they motivated by shares in the company? Are they motivated by promotions? Are they also motivated by praise? And if so, what types So sometimes we think, having that big billboard of employee of the month and sending something out to all of your coworkers is a great thing. But if you don't know that employee, that might be something that is so embarrassing and uncomfortable for them. So know if your employees like you to shout from the rooftops, or do they like that quiet one-to-one praise? And what do they respond best to? So send out those questions, send out that survey, and see what they like. What are they motivated by? We recently talked about the motivators as, expanding on creativity and having staff lunches and, those pizza parties. And of course, I think that those can be really helpful in creating morale, but knowing that retention is a little bit greater than that as well. And what do people need for long term? So having your in behavior analysis, we call them antecedent. You can also think of them as like our foundational strategies. So these are the ways that you can set up a employee's position, set up your company, set up your structure, and have things that employees have non-contingency. So they have it each and every single day. They have it when they're hired. So examples of that, benefits. I think that this is something that is pretty common knowledge, but I do find a lot of smaller businesses, don't offer benefits, can't afford them. In the long run, I think benefits for employees pay for themselves when you offer really good benefits and benefit packages. You are attracting a much broader set of employees. So if you are a company that you don't offer health or dental or retirement benefits, you are narrowing your field down to people that are on their spouse's insurance or are college students. So you're just narrowing your fields that you're looking employees under. So making sure that you have a great foundation of benefits that you guys can offer. Having a clean, safe work environment. This is the foundation. This should be something that they have each and every single day. No one wants to be holed up in a small dusty office with outdated everything and wood paneling. We want to have an environment that is safe, that's fun, that's comfortable, that we want to come to every single day. Having consistent supervision and access to management. So having that open door policy, listening, truly listening to your employees from the beginning. What do they need? What is working? And having that structure already set up. Valuing employee time. So this is can go in so many different ways. So making sure that all of their time is valued, whether you have an employee that is driving during work, that is doing something that maybe doesn't even create revenue, making sure that all of those things are valued at the same level as all of the things that do create revenue, that are the more important services that you guys are providing. So having that value of employee time makes employees feel valued, makes them feel like they have a greater worth. And then the last for antecedents of foundational strategies, clear, concise expectations. This is something that is so important from the beginning of hiring and consistently throughout time. Having those clear, concise expectations. I can say this, I can be guilty of not being as clear and concise as I want to be, but knowing that about yourself and setting those goals as leaders. And then lastly, talking about varying schedules and reinforcement. So I tried to kind of break this down to something that wasn't so behavior analytic in terms, but this is really all of those things that make people want to stay in their position, stay with your company, and stay in their job. It can't be that they're just paid well. No, certainly getting paid well is one thing, but it only meets one layer. If you're paid well and you don't feel appreciated, if there's no team worth, if there's no intermittent ways of providing praise to them, then all of those expectations, they're not met. So some different ways with schedules of reinforcement. So tying together with the building rapport, like I had mentioned about finding out what makes your employees tick. So maybe that is having some bonuses or some goals that are built surrounding the company goals, surrounding the employee goals, and having those on a consistent basis. So of course they get paid on a consistent basis, but what else can you add? What other layers of reinforcement can you add to create that motivation? Working maybe towards having extra PTO, extra shares in the company, working towards those clear promotions and title changes, and having those varied. So you want to make sure that they have them as a foundation, and then they continue to have them on a regular basis and in a drop-in basis as well. So when you're meeting them for supervision and your management meetings, having those, shouting out those praises and all the things that you do want to see more of for the employees. So to wrap it up, I did put in a few books. A couple of them come from organizational behavior management field. Another one that I'm actually working through, Crucial Conversations. So this is a book that I found has been really helpful when, of course, we can have all of the reinforcement and motivation and structure in the company, but we still are going to have those crucial conversations in our fields. We are still going to have discussions with employees that can be uncomfortable, and those are as important as the setup and structure. So this has been something that that I've looked to and have enjoyed, that I found really helpful. The other one is specific to human service field, but I think it's really applicable to any and all fields as well. This was another great one that uses that behavior management in order to create company morale and reduce employee turnover. So that's all that I have today. So I'll roll it back over to Amanda and take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Amanda. That was very informative again. So that wraps up our little presentations from each of our panelists. And I just want to say that now we're going to go into the Q&A portion. So I will welcome to the screen all four of our panelists, and have Amanda stop sharing her screen if that's okay. There she goes. And if you want to unmute, we do have a couple questions to start, but I also want to say that at any point from now until about noon, if anybody has comments, questions, enter them in the Q&A feature. Even if we haven't addressed something that you're curious about, if you have a challenge you want to present, if you found something that works for you that you want to share, definitely share that in the Q&A feature. And also, this is being recorded, so we can definitely have it up online after. I will also share on our website all those resources that Marlana, Casey, and Amanda were able to share with us, the book names and links for those. And I also want to say that if there's anyone that's part of that younger generation in the audience listening, and you found you want to share anything that you felt others should be aware of, there are other executives and leaders in the audience, so feel free to voice your concerns, challenges, and so forth. So I guess to start, we do have a question here from Jean that does the panel think that the labor and talent shortfall in Southern New Hampshire has been looking past older people as quote unquote washed up, and are now looking at them for their expertise, knowledge, and experience? So I don't know if anybody on the panel has a solution.
I can jump in quickly and I know Jean had added a second part about, just read it here, the dual path occurring in Southern New Hampshire for companies that are actively recruiting 55 plus. So I recently spoke with a couple other panelists for the Manchester Area Human Resources Association, and there's definitely a need for all generations, everyone in the workforce. Like I mentioned when I was speaking, that there is a very low unemployment rate here in the state of New Hampshire, which is great, but that also means that we're not just looking to attract a younger workforce, we're looking to attract everyone into the workforce. I think we're focusing heavily on the younger generation though, because we are looking towards them to help grow the economic base of New Hampshire, where, you know, they're attracting them to the area, growing a family, having children in our school systems, creating a foundation. So I think that's why we have more of we tend to focus more on that generation. And I don't want to speak for anyone else on the panel, but I do think there is a need for people still in that 55 plus age bracket that are still ready, willing, and able to work. I know working for the city of Manchester, we are actively pursuing and going after anyone that's interested in applying. We just don't seem to be getting much people from that 55 plus age bracket. New Hampshire consistently ranks as one of the best places to retire to. And one of the outcomes of COVID is that a lot of people chose to retire early. We have been seeing in the news that is now shifting, that some people are coming out of what they considered was their early retirement and getting back into the workforce. So I do think there is still a high demand for people in the 55 plus age brackets.
Thank you, Jodie. Amanda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, of course, my experience with this kind of comes from a whole different field of human services. And I think it is very field dependent. Personally, in our field of human services, our direct support are typically just getting out of high school, just getting out of college, with very, very limited experiences. So when I see someone that is in their 50s come through, I'm like, holy moly, the immense amount of experience that comes with that is so super valued. And I look at it, you know, someone that's coming through, like, great, is this what they're going to be looking to do as they retire? So I see, you know, someone that applies in, you know, the age range of the 50s as gold. I'm like, this is awesome because, you know, hopefully this is a long-term thing for them. So I think it really is very much field dependent.
Yeah, and I'll just tack on to that, Amanda, if it's okay, that I think it comes back to business owners and decision makers and their honest assessment of the deficiencies of their areas of weakness when they think about the next 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years, and being honest with themselves. It's agnostic to the age per se. It's how do we fill these gaps? And to your point, Jodie, about the really low unemployment rate, it's a struggle. We're just looking to fill the gaps, but we need to understand what the gap is to fill it appropriately for now and in the future.
Very good. We also have a question from Vanessa, and if anyone is able to speak to this, you know, her question is, why aren't more businesses advocating for Med for All and relieving themselves of the cost of covering benefits for employees, thereby freeing up funds to pay employees a higher rate? Are any of you familiar with that, or are able to speak to any type of tools that can help businesses cover those costs? No,
Not my wheelhouse. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Vanessa, we can work on getting an answer for you. But our next question from Ernesto is, Marlana, appreciated your comments about carving out time for the creative work and brainstorming. Could you expand on how you maintain this discipline when times are intense? You know, how do you avoid letting that critical part of the work become a casualty of crisis?
Yeah, Ernesto, I appreciate your question. And I think that this is funny. We were just talking about how creative you are in our office the other day. Our creative director was saying, oh, Ernesto really has these really interesting hobbies. And I truly believe that when people have interesting hobbies, when they actually take time away from the office to do these volunteer projects, those are going to activate that creativity within your office. But actually scheduling time is truly the best approach. So I think even just starting with something quarterly that you have on your calendar, and then utilizing some resources. So one of the ones that I kind of alluded to, but there are some PIP decks that I don't know if anyone has heard of, but they give you just a card and an activity that you can implement right away. And it's something that you could maybe start in your team meetings as kind of, I don't want to necessarily say an icebreaker, but it's saying, here's a problem, let's state a problem that we're having, and then how can we work towards that solution? So it could be something along the lines of, We're getting a lot of folks signed up for webinars, but not everyone is showing up. And maybe that is like a problem that everyone is solving for, and giving people the opportunity through one of these exercises to provide solutions, and knowing that it's not just the marketing department that's going to have those creative ideas, and everyone's going to piggyback off of each other's ideas as well. But having a framework in place and time on the schedule is super important, but also just giving your employees the opportunity to get outside of the office. So I would say 2 specific ways to tackle that is to build in some time during all hands team meetings or department meetings. And then the other one would be to actually get it on the calendar quarterly and utilize existing resources to make that happen, like cards or frameworks to help make those brainstormings a success. And then you'll see that momentum and be really excited. It's going to be something that people look forward to. So I appreciate that question, and I'd love to hear what other people are doing to make that a discipline as well.
Yeah, I'll chime in. It's something that we've been talking a lot about, especially coming out of the last couple of years, which has been sort of an all hands on deck because of COVID and the workloads and juggling this work-life balance. But to your point, we have started to schedule it into our calendars on a quarterly basis. And we're even having conversations internally about how, I said this to a team member the other day, where really want your day to have about 45 minutes to an hour of free time per day so that you can be creative because of the value that you can add, not just on a day-to-day basis, but strategically. And I think a lot of us get caught up in the busyness defining our value. We're busy, we're busy, we're busy. When in reality, we really need to carve out some times for creativity, for thinking differently, for approaching something from a different perspective. And so I think we're trying to integrate that mindset on a day-to-day basis a little bit in conjunction with these sort of quarterly strategic planning, creative ideas, and getting out of the office and having some fun. What you mentioned earlier, Marlana, about fun. I think the fun aspect in the workforce has been an aspect that's kind of fallen by the wayside. It's been that casualty, so to speak, where I think we need to make sure to bring it back in because everyone's working hard. And without the fun being involved in that, it risks that burnout aspect of things. So it's on our mind. I don't know if we have a perfect solution for it, but we're certainly working towards one.
Yeah, and I think it's, I even had a question of what is company culture still a huge factor, a driving factor for people in the younger generations looking to enter the workforce? And I think that fun aspect is a huge part of it, where they don't want to feel like they're strapped to a desk all day, every day. And, even I think it was, Casey who mentioned in your talk, having those times to get out in the community even is a huge part of that. So what are there examples in your workplaces of what programs or sort of fun community things that you guys do together with your employees?
So for us, we have tried to implement a monthly thing. So some monthly team building activity. Like last month we did try to do a creative thing, so doing wreath making, and then this month we're doing like a Fisher Cats outing. Some of the struggle that I've found with that is that there is a divide we have some people who want to do those things, and then we also have some people that have a second job that they have to do on Friday nights, that have children that they're like, we just committed the entire week to you. I can't take up more time to sit and hang out with you. I'm taking time away from my friends and family. So it is a challenging balance to have with scheduling too, when to do it, how to do it. But, having that monthly offering that we can just have on the calendar, that's always on the calendar that people know that they can come to. We had tried to implement doing like a monthly happy hour. So having, a couple different social events to have. That's how we've tried to do it.
I think something you just mentioned, Amanda, about people commit their work weeks to their careers and their jobs, and they have other passions and values and relationships. So I think part of this is making sure to incorporate it into the work week instead of imposing on people's free time that is meant for family, children, parents, etc. I think I think that says a lot about the firm's commitment and respect for people's lives. And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. And that from the thing that we've struggled with that is in order to have it during people's work weeks, we would have to cancel client services. So we're like, how do we, every single couple weeks, every month, cancel, 9 staff off of client services in order to do something that's more fun. So we've definitely struggled with that, with trying to figure out time to be able to do that.
And I think what we learned is not everything is going to work for every organization right away. So I think what's interesting is out of for Orbit Group, we have a bookstore. And so that's like an hourly staff going in. So to Amanda's point, like we can't necessarily close our doors. I mean, we could, and we have, but that's not necessarily the best option all the time. And having people come in when they're potentially going to school or other jobs, I can feel that pain point. So I think there are ways to incorporate just fun. And I guess I was just going to ask this question in the group chat as just like, how is everyone currently incorporating fun in their office? To Casey's point is just like, what are small things that you can do throughout the day or throughout the week that can make that happen? But I know leaning into what people's strengths are. So going back to that Strength Finder book, when I noticed that when people really light up, if it's the opportunity to actually go on a scavenger hunt in the bookstore, this just happened yesterday. And I was like, can you help me find some really great wedding gifts? Because wedding season's upon us and we want to do some social posts. And it was like working with 2 employees and then kind of went on a scavenger hunt to try to find all these items. That's having fun, but they're still able to do their job and have fun while doing it. So that could be like a small example of ways that you can engage your employees while at the office or while in the organization.
And, one of the other questions that we had got from Jeff Young is that, when some of your staff is working remote, it can be tricky to have those fun outings. But I know that Marlana, during your presentation, you had mentioned some interesting ways to connect virtually or to keep everyone connected. And I know you mentioned some virtual escape rooms, which I think is a fantastic idea. And it's just something that's not necessarily work related, but still that fun aspect. And I also, another idea is at a previous employer of mine where most of our staff was remote. We every Friday at around, at the end of the day, we would play like a virtual game together. And it was just fun. Like it doesn't have to be super like regimented. It could just be something fun to do together. And I think that's really important. So if any of you have other ideas of how you can connect with remote staff, definitely please share.
We haven't run into that situation personally. We do know of a handful of others who have a pretty diverse staff across the country. And one of the things that they do, though, is to make sure that they bring everyone together at some point throughout the course of the year, whether it be once or twice. Because for all the digital interaction that in between the smaller things, the hour-long virtual games or something along those lines, there's still the importance of, carving out 2 days, once or twice a year, bring everyone together to create that bond, because nothing really replaces that personal interaction. I understand that not everybody can do that, but when they can, I think I've heard that it's very beneficial.
For sure. And I also kind of want to bring it back a little bit to, some of you had mentioned the importance of mentoring and coaching. And I think that that's super important with bringing people together and with those generational gaps that Casey, you were talking about, where we have even just the older employees and then the new ones coming in, there's a lot of knowledge to be shared. And so I'm curious if any of you have some some thoughts on how we can measure that, like make it a formalized program, or does it need to be formalized in the workplace? And maybe kind of share starting points that you guys have seen in your workplace that leadership teams can kind of take and run with and create their own sort of program in their workplace.
I can speak from a personal experience and what worked for me, and that's upper management and leadership taking the initiative to recognize the importance of that. I think that's the critical factor. Number one is that leadership needs to understand how important that is. And it might not always be comfortable for someone younger in the workforce coming in and connecting with someone in the leadership role, but it can lead to tremendous opportunity for that newer person in the workforce. And I experienced that when I was interning for the city of Manchester. My leadership, the deputy director of the department I was working for, and another senior staff member really kind of took me under their wing and made sure that I knew what I was doing and I felt like I was part of the office. And it really helped me feel a connection. And it was an unpaid, this was the time internships could be unpaid. So how much was I really connecting with this opportunity? I was doing it because I needed school credit, but they made me feel a part of the office. And even though I wasn't being paid, they made me feel like I was part of the team. And ultimately now look where I am because of that, the gate that opened and that connection. I'm now myself a director for the city of Manchester because of how important that mentorship was. So I don't necessarily know if it needs to be a formal process, but I think having leadership be completely aware of how important it is definitely critical.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think it's cultural. And I don't know if it needs to be formalized, but I think it starts at the top. And I have benefited from an incredible amount of mentorship over the years, and it has opened doors and provided experience and exposure in ways that I never would have had otherwise. And I think at some point too, it starts to work both ways. And the reverse mentorship is increasingly important as well, as the world continues to change very quickly. And so when you have that mutual level of respect for one another, and you recognize each other's excellences, as I pointed out earlier, you can learn a lot from one another on an ongoing basis. And there's so much wisdom to be passed in terms of both ways at some point. And I think depending on how that develops, then there's that next step of, okay, now maybe coaching becomes the next level. So the mentorship is still in place, but in terms of expediting the learning curve, coaching can really help, I think, foster and develop those skill sets at a faster pace than would otherwise happen naturally. And even then, that feeds back into the mentorship and the reverse mentorship that's taking place. And it just kind of has this ripple effect throughout teams. So whether it be a standardized process for mentorship or coaching, but I think it has this ripple effect that starts to show and is incredibly helpful on the personal and the professional side of things. I have trouble differentiating my personal life from my professional life. They are so intertwined, and my colleagues are friends and colleagues. They're my extended family. So I can't necessarily say that's professional versus that's personal. They bleed together. And I think when we're able to find some sort of harmony because of the mentorship, because of the coaching, it turns into a really fun, kind of beautiful thing where everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction.
I love it. Thank you. And this actually kind of brings up a good point with having that partnership with somebody, or having the leadership sort of implement that close relationships with each other. It reminds me of Amanda when you were talking about having that open door policy and having those difficult conversations, especially when it involves maybe other coworkers or working relationships together. Do you have any like suggested communication tools where the upper leadership can help prevent that sort of turnover if people aren't working well together, or preventing burnout is another big thing. So I'm not sure if you have thoughts on what leaders can keep in mind when having those honest but really difficult conversations.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel like we're too supervision heavy at my agency, where I'm like, God, we're always meeting with each other. But I think that also keeps the lines of communications open when things are going good and when they're not so good, and being able to facilitate those conversations. So if you are having, only meeting with your employees and seeing them every couple months, maybe once a quarter, they're not, they're typically not comfortable enough to have those types of conversations. But when you're regularly meeting with them and having those conversations and leaving that door open for them to have conversations, I find that people are more likely to. I was recently listening to a podcast, and they had talked about how when an issue comes to you as a leader, it's typically too late. Like the first person that sees those issues is the people that it's happening to. So by the time it actually even comes to you, it's oftentimes too late. So you have to really be intermingled within your employees, opposed to being that outsider. I'm constantly trying to, kind of listen and feel what the morale is like between different employees, and specifically asking, like, is there anything going on, between these two people? What's going on here? How is it going? And having those open lines of communication can really desensitize to those uncomfortable conversations, because when they are more novel, they're more uncomfortable.
That's pretty true.
If I may on that too, I think, Amanda, I am often head down, working long hours, and I am not aware of the temperature of the team at times. And so I think it's been very helpful for me to have go-tos to be able to say, all right, what's really going on? Because I've been in meetings for the last 8 hours, and give me the truth. Like, what does the team need? What's the mindset? Are we close to burnout? Where are we? And so having a trusted voice or trusted voices that will give you the truth, and less in a formal way, but more in a, hey, you missed this, here's what you need to pay attention to, has been very helpful.
Yeah. And I try to take those like temperatures and those little things that I suspect might be happening, and with my employees, I try to take them from being subjective to making them more objective. So when I hear like, oh, I'm feeling burnt out, what does that mean? What is causing the burnout, and what can we do? If we can't make it tangible, then we can't do anything about it. So making it very, very clear and objective, and coming at it from a problem solving perspective. I've had those conversations with employees too, where I'm like, I'm sensing you're burnt out. I'm sensing you're struggling. Is it personal? Is it professional? Let's start there. Where is it coming from? Okay, if it's personal, what do you need? If it's professional, what do you need? And just trying to really make it as objective and solve the problems as much as possible. I find that really helpful.
Thank you. I feel like with the new generations that are coming into the workforce, and I'm a millennial, but I know that there's other younger generations that are starting to come in, they're starting to graduate college, and they want to get into, start their careers. And I have to admit, I've been seeing this question a lot online. And I'm just curious what any of your thoughts are around, is there such a thing as a career anymore? A lot of people seem to be jumping around from position to position. And is it more of a, if you find the culture that you stick with them? Is it the work itself? What should companies keep in mind as they start to recruit those new employees from younger generations? Is there something that they should keep in mind? Is it something that the questions they're asking in their applications? I don't know if anybody has thoughts around that.
So I'll jump into this a little bit. I've found I am constantly trying to think about those things, and my focus has tried to be on the mutual respect of, I may not be able to retain them forever, and they may be someone who thinks grass is always greener on the other side. And even if the culture is perfect, I may still lose them. But if I can still have a really good foundation and culture within my company, then typically I find that you're given more notice, or employees might even tell you, hey, I'm looking for something a little bit different. Just want to give you a heads up. And just having that respect, you may be able to get a little bit more notice about potential turnaround that you're having, even if you can't avoid that turnaround. So I don't know if anyone has a more specific way of how to create it or what they're seeing, but that's what I found as the end result.
Yeah, I would agree with what Amanda's saying, and I would kind of then piggyback on what I was saying earlier about that's why branding is so important, where the workforce is not necessarily, or the younger workforce is not necessarily coming because that's what they went to college for, and that's your company is what they strive to be working for in their future. It may just be convenient for them, and that's kind of the somewhat of the reality we're dealing with now with the workforce is the younger generations are looking for convenience and comfortability. So rather than them finding you, you need to find them. And that's where that brand story comes in, and really promoting what you have to offer, why your company culture is unique, why your benefits package is unique, why where your company is located is unique, and all part you have to really work to promote yourself now. And it's an environment, and this is not just unique to New Hampshire, this is everywhere, where employers are now the ones doing the job search, and it's not the employee doing the job search. It's almost roles reversed.
And I think it's just constantly like I think a lot of the conversation that happened today is, you know, how do you provide that motivation and the coaching to keep people at your organization, but also provide that mobility and having those check-ins, because I do think there has been a lot of job hopping, but I also look to my dad's generation where they stayed in jobs for 40 plus years. And I love that. And I want that as well for myself, because I do think that, especially in the organization that I am in now, every day is so vastly different. And our companies are always evolving because we work in the tech startup space too. So like we're always launching new things. So it feels like I'm almost at different companies every day. But I would say it's just asking, like, you know, how do you keep people having fun? How do you give people opportunities to build what they want to build outside of the office? Because I think Amanda asked that question too, like, is it outside of the office or is it inside of the office? And I think it's just allowing that more of the hybrid workspace, all of these things that we learned from COVID. I actually am hopeful that people will stay in jobs longer. So I know that we're seeing a lot of like return to the office and a lot of memes with the office still being empty. And I think that Casey spoke about the importance of still having those in-person opportunities. But I do feel that organizations are trying to not be so black and white and be more open-minded to the whole work-life balance aspect. And I think that is the one silver lining from having a pandemic and having to utilize new tools and think through our processes and how we work. So I would say I'm hopeful that people will actually see their career as a longer term career in these organizations, because there's just more opportunities to take a sabbatical or be hybrid or incorporate a hobby into maybe the workplace culture in some way. So I'm hopeful.
I agree. I am very hopeful. And I think something that we talked about prior to this was that the workforce is becoming, in many respects, more goals-based versus presence-based. You know, presence-based was when you were in your seat from 8:30 to 5, no matter what was going on. And goals-based provides the flexibility to do what comes up or what you need to do, but also making sure that you're achieving your goals and performing the work that you've been tasked to perform. But I think in my experience, it's hard to say no to somebody that wants to invest in you and wants to support your development. And if an organization is able to create that kind of culture where they're going to invest in you and look to support you both personally and professionally, and look for outlets for you to develop various skill sets that may not always be in alignment with the job at hand, knowing that your skill sets are going to have to evolve over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think it makes it hard to leave at times, unless it just comes down to dollars and flexibility. And I think to Marlena's point about, I think we're far enough out from COVID where we're starting to see that pendulum kind of find its new norm, kind of recalibrating in a way. And every company is finding that hybrid solution or the remote solution or whatever solution is best for them. So I'm hoping that turnover rate, I'm hopeful that that comes down and stabilizes some.
I think we all hope that. And I just want to, reiterate that these are some very important solutions to keep in mind. And I'm just thinking about when I was entering the workforce for the first time, it kind of goes a lot with what Jodie was saying, with making sure that your presence is, your branding is being seen as a fun place, with a culture that you can connect with, because I feel like people are more looking towards not just the duties, but what are the cultural aspects of the company, and that's what people are looking for more now. So just making sure that your outward presence, either your websites or your social, the job descriptions you put together reflects that. And I think that's really important for those who are looking for new jobs and to want to stay. So I think that's really important. So I guess since we only have a few minutes left, I want to invite our panelists to maybe give last bit of advice for our audience, whether they're a new generation newcomer or a leadership team member who is looking to hire those of the new generation. So if you all can share a little last bit of advice for us, we'll leave that as our takeaways.
I'll jump in just because I feel like you gave me an easy opportunity to share this with my marketing hat on. Is I would say whenever you have the opportunity to work, if you're the marketing person for your organization, or if you have an opportunity to work with them, get the HR team and marketing working together and share behind the scenes stories of your employees, show what they do outside of work, because people want to do business with people. So it's not just about the hiring piece, but it's also about attracting the right clients that you want to have fun with. Like Amanda opened her organization so she can have fun at work and make, really positive impact, right? So I think that social and your website, if it doesn't already, showcase like why people are working at your organization, what they love about your organization, what they do for fun, what issues they care most about. That's a big opportunity to not only attract the right talent, but also attract the right clients. So that's one actionable takeaway I challenge people to implement over the next month. And thank you again for having me today.
Thank you, Marlana.
I'll jump in.
Amanda.
So I
Okay.
think, sorry, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
So I think it's just getting creative with how you promote yourselves, and getting creative with the types of benefits that you offer. And I feel sometimes when we say the term benefits, we think of like, oh, that's increasing cost to the employer, but it doesn't necessarily have to when you think about what people are looking for in this modern age of the workforce. Obviously working from home is more of a priority now than it was in 2019, but also pets are more of a priority for a lot of people now. So even maybe working in pet insurance to your benefits package, or encouraging to have an environment that allows pets. I mean, that goes a long way with attracting certain people to the workforce. I mean, if I was in the job search and I was between two places and one let me bring my dog into the office and the other didn't, I would likely choose the one that let me bring my dog. So thinking about how we write our job descriptions and our benefits packages, I think will go a long way. And also how you write your job descriptions. I've always had major issues with the way that the city of Manchester writes our job descriptions. We are a government entity, so I understand why we do it this way, but it tends to be a list of the duties rather than a description of what the environment is, what the culture is like. So there's really no, from right off from the beginning, there's no culture, there's no connectivity. It's like, can I achieve these duties? Yes, I can do it. Okay, I fit the mold now. But there's really no connection there. So I encourage people to maybe look at how they're writing their job descriptions and maybe modernize those to be a little bit friendlier.
Amanda?
Yeah, my final thoughts are really making sure that your organization is set up with many different levels of reinforcement for staff, and knowing that most people come to a job with the best intentions, and I try to find the best in something really good in every single person, look to increase that behavior, look to work off of that. As Casey had said, make it hard for people to leave. If you have all of those things in place, then you know that you've done your job in giving employees what they need, what they want, and treating them with respect. And you can just hope for the best to be able to retain them as long as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's along the lines of what I was going to say is take care of your own. I mean, take care of your people, look at them as people first, team members and colleagues second. And I try to, something to keep in the back of my mind is this a culture? Is this an environment that you would want your own kids to be part of? Is it fostering the development that your own children are going to need to remain competitive and build a life for themselves? And if it is, and I think that says a lot about where you're going, and I think it'll make it very difficult for people to leave. And then by default, it attracts others to the organization. They hear about you, they understand the flexibility, they see the empathy, they hear about it from others. And I think it aligns with the climate in terms of where we're going. Because 5 years from now is going to be different than where we are today. And we're going to have to continue to evolve in ways that may feel uncomfortable at first, but it's coming.
Thank you. So thank you to our panelists today for tuning in, for those tuning in. And before we go, I just want to thank again our sponsors presented by Service Credit Union and our supporting sponsors, Bank Prov and Connection. A recording of today's presentation will be available on our website later on at nhbr.com. And I'm also going to link on that site all the resources that our panelists shared, along with the book names and some links. So thanks again to everyone who tuned in, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thank you.